Have great privilege. Have great privilege. There, all the time. Everything has to get over good. Now, too much that has been given to us for us to not get things done well, and especially in this country. And I mean, sometimes we take it for granted. But God has given us a lot in this country, and we have a right to use what He's given us to help others and help them get to their state, their place that God wants them to, their value, the understanding the value, so they could add value like God created us to. Okay, so we have help us get it done, partner with us as we do great things for the kingdom of God. Okay, hope you checked our blog out this week, every Friday at 8 a.m. This week was, let me make sure I get the title right. I always have to look at these things, guys. Bootstrap versus VC backed, venture capital backed. And that's what we're looking at, investments. And that's how, if you're in the entrepreneur space like we are, you would know all about that. Bootstrap is when you do it on your own. You get your money, you put your monies together, whatever you've saved, whatever you get friends and family to give to you, whatever it is, and you foot the bill on your own to get that business going, that organization, whatever it is. Now, venture capital back is when you have other people invest into your corporation, and you have to go to the venture capitalists. And there's a lot of them. If you ever look at the show Shark Tank, that's what that's about. They're people who've established themselves. They made a whole bunch of money, and now they like to put it into other businesses to either acquire the businesses or invest in it so they can become partners in the business, or sometimes they just want to give you the money and with no partnership just because they like what you're doing. That's what we call the venture capitalists. And so when we have these two things, we were talking about it. I like the podcast that came out of it. It was really, really good. And it was talking about the different advantages and the disadvantages. And a lot of times we especially if you're in that entrepreneurial space, it's difficult. It is tight. Okay. And so there's a lot of pros and cons to doing it all yourself or having other people invest in your company. And so that's what we're talking about. So I hope it was very, very interesting. Some of the points that were touched on is what I really, really wanted to, if you don't go out there and check it, Fava Conversation on our favourofagreatgod.com website, and check it out and see it and listen to it. Very informative and very good. Okay. Some of the pros and cons, and they broke them down a little bit more than I'm going to, but first one, control versus accountability. If you're bootstrapped, you get to keep all the control. I mean, you do everything yourself. You create the vision. You create the product, the hiring priorities, the pricing, the exit. Everything is you. It's all on you. And that way, when you have that, you keep control. And especially for like entrepreneurs like me who are probably in you're believers, you're faith-based, and you have different values that you stand by. That's one of the best ways to keep it together, because when you bring more people in, you got to manage more people. But if you want to grow, you're going to need more people. You can't do it yourself. So that's one area. That's why a lot of people stay in that, but I'm going to put all the monies in, so I don't want to have investors. And then you have to make sure if you get investors, you have good investors, because you could end up in a situation, if you ever watch movies about the mafia and everything, where they give you money and then they want to come control you. So that's the other situation. Venture capitalists back, you see meaningful control in exchange for governance and accountability. You have board oversight, you have milestone expectations, and investor opinions accelerate strategic clarity. So people are now coming in, they put their monies in, they're going to want to put their 2 cents in. Very few people want to be silent partners where they give you the money and they don't want to do anything, just do what you do because they like what you do. Very few people are like that, okay? But for the majority of them, and by right, I mean, if you're putting your money somewhere, you want to make sure it's doing good and it's doing what you want it to do. So that's the two differences. And some people pick one over the other for whatever your choice is, whatever works for you, actually. Okay. Another one they mentioned was speed of opportunity versus focused survival. The bootstrap person, resource constraints force ruthless focus. You prioritize revenue generating features and customer retention. So you focus on certain things. I want to keep my customers. I want to make money, and you stay there. So you have that's that focus survival. We got to make it. We got to get there. Whereas with the venture capitalist, capital buys speed, hiring, marketing, and product investment at scale. That speed wins markets when timing and network effects matter. So it's and don't get me wrong, neither of them are wrong, but you have to understand what you're getting into. So when you do venture capital and you get money from people, you have more money and you can go faster. You can do more, you can hire more, you can pay better salaries. That means you can get better better personnel to work for you. You get more expertise to work for you because you have that money, and you can market things because you have the money to do it. And that's why a lot of people have to go with venture capitalists, and I can see it. But you also have to think when you're doing that, make sure you are very discerning. You vet the people well and all that, because once they give you their money, they are now influential in your business. You're accountable to them. You have to answer to them. And if they don't have good values, that's going to be a clash. So you have to vet those very, very carefully. Culture formation. Deep ownership versus growth urgency. The bootstrap person, a bootstrap company, teams often have high ownership and multidisciplinary roles. Employees feel the tangible impact of their work. Culture tends to be long horizon, frugal, and mission driven. So people, employees, they get to see their what do you call that, the fruit of their labor, if you say so. There's a culture that's created because you have everybody working together with the same mission, and they understand each other for the most part. Venture capitalist backed companies, however, rapid hiring and structured incentives, options, KPIs, you give them benefits in the company, produce growth focused cultures. So because you're hiring quickly and the money's coming, you now have a culture where we need to grow fast. We want to scale fast because we have the people, we have the money to do so. So why not do so? That attracts people excited by scale and rapid career leaps. However, frequent rewiring from investor demands can generate transactional relationships and short termism. So because you're hiring and people know what's going on, they basically just say, you have to pay me this amount of money for my labor. I need this, I need that. So it's more transactional as opposed to them feeling invested enough to want to put their all into it, to want to bring their ideas, to want to bring just different things to add to it, because they don't feel as invested, because they don't see it as something being a personal thing where they get to add to the mission. They see there's something where I'm making money and I could be growing fast, and it's a big company. And so they're focused probably more on the money than actually adding as much value as they can, or you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's understandable. Both are good in a way, but you just have to know what you're getting into, and you have to balance it well, because even if you're scaling, doesn't mean we don't want meaningful relationships, meaningful employees. We want them to feel like what they do matters, and it's important to the mission. So that's what I'm saying. If you have either or, you have to understand what it is and see how you can tweak what you need to tweak to get the results you want to get. I mean, understandable, right? Hiring signal, money versus mission. Bootstrap, you attract people who want autonomy, craft, and meaning. Salaries and perks may be constrained, so you rely on mission and equity upside in a smaller company. So a smaller company, you're not going to get too much money, so you're focused on what we could do to add meaning to people's lives. It may not be, so you have to focus. You're not focusing on the salary because it's not going to be as big, but there's some perks to it. You get to bless people. That's why people who work in churches, because I worked in a nonprofit before, it's more focused on the value add to people's lives. You're doing God's mission as opposed to, because you're not making as much as you would make in the secular world. So you focus more on the value as opposed to the amount of money that you make. So that's the one thing with Bootstrap. And the venture capital now, you can compete for senior talent with market salaries and attractive equity packages tied to significant upside. But hiring for blitz scale sometimes brings in leaders optimized for growth over sustainability, increasing execution risk if growth stalls. So because they have that mindset of we want to add growth, we're going to make money, because the more growth we add, there are more promotions, there's an increase in salary we're going to get. So when you focus on that, you do things for that. But if something happens, like in the economy we have, where things are stalling and AI is coming in, whatever, and you can't make as much, that may bring a little frustration, and people could actually leave the company because they're not in it for that reason. You know what I'm saying? So there's a way you could do that. You could come together and make it, even if you're scaling and you're providing all the different promotions or whatever, you can now come and say, well, although we're doing this, we still want to stay on the mission. We still want to make sure that we're focused on helping people and adding value, even if the money is there as well. So you have to find a way to make that balance, because you can end up with a problem. If something goes wrong, they're not in it for the reasons that you want them to, you know? Whew, okay. And I've been in both companies, so I understand both styles of company culture, I guess, what you call it. Metrics and milestones, cash flow versus growth KPIs. Okay. Bootstrap, cash flow. They focus on cash flow and profitability. That dominates the whole situation. Metrics focus on unit economics, churn, and customer LTV. That makes businesses inherently resilient, but sometimes less exciting to outside observers. So they focus on profitability, okay? And the venture capitalists now, the metrics emphasize growth rate. It's all about getting growth, scaling as fast as possible. This aligns teams toward top line expansion and often obscures unit economics until late stage scrutiny. Okay, so you have to just understand what it is. You're growing so much, you focus on your numbers and everything that sometimes you're not scrutinizing what is going on within the company. Yeah, you may be making the numbers, but are we growing the way we should in the direction we should? Very important. Another one, optionality and exit. These are good. I just love these. Optionality and exit pathways. Bootstrap. You preserve every exit option. Acquisition, lifestyle, business, or later fundraising. You preserve them. You retain the right to walk away with a functioning, profitable company. Everything is yours, so you make decisions. With venture capital backed, the investor model often narrows acceptable exits to high multiple acquisitions or IPOs. Investors may push for aggressive outcomes to realize returns. If you miss those outcomes, dilution and misaligned timelines can leave founders with less than expected. So when you're focusing on scaling, you need to, I always say, even if you're trying to make the money, make sure you keep the mission in mind. Make sure you make sure that culture of adding value, of character, of integrity is also maintained. Because if you go focus after the numbers, there could be something could happen where now you're not as mission focused, you're not people focused, you forget about the people, you're just worried about the money. That's why you have companies that end up in situations where they do shady things, even if to preserve the profitability margins, to preserve their increase. And then you end up with people who create products that they know are not good, but they still put it out anyway. That's where that could come in, right there in that culture. Because you're so focused on scaling and you're making the money. If somebody now comes and tells you, oh, this is not ready yet to be sold or to put on the market. And then you can end up in a place where you're saying, well, we need to put it out because millions of dollars are riding on this, or the IPO, it's about to become an IPO. It's about to be become a public situation, and you want to promote it as one. So you end up doing shady things. You end up putting out bad, bad reports with wrong numbers, so you could get the money part. So that's the code. That's why you have to make sure you balance those things. Okay, integrity has to match skill, so that you're not doing things just to get the money, and you forget what the mission is. You forget that you're about helping people. You forget that it's about saving lives and all these different things. So very, very important to balance those two out, especially with venture capitalists, because remember, you're getting people's money. And so I always say, before you get their money, and we have something that we've created in our company about that. If you get their money, make sure their values match yours. Don't just go for the money and get giddy, because once you have the money, I always remember these Godfather movies, because that's all I have. Because with these mafia people, they give them the money. And even back in the day in the Wild Wild West, when things were now starting for countries like America, whatever, they would give them the money because they need the money, not asking questions. Okay, now about 5 years down, not even 5 years, something, a year down the road, they come to you with some weird request that is way shady, that's not in line with your values. And they tell you you can't tell them no because they own your company. You see what I'm saying? So it's very important when you're doing venture capital that you make sure you have a conversation with the people giving you money, tell them this is what we stand, and are you in agreement with us? If they're not with you and it's something with value and faith and helping people, you need to say no. You got to say no, because later on you could end up losing your company, and sometimes losing, people go to jail for that. People lose their lives for that. So just always be mindful of these things. Okay, we have a couple more, I think. Risk distribution, personal versus collective. Bootstrap, founders shoulder more personal financial risk because all your money's in it. And that's why whenever you do companies, especially as founders, never put it in your name. Always put it in an LLC that's not linked to your name. Okay, so that protects you with legal situations and people doing different things. Now this goes to the company, not your personal stuff. So you don't lose your home over your company. You see what I'm saying? So always make sure you separate those two very nicely and legally. Legally. Okay. Keyword right there. Because that could come back to bite you when you're putting all your monies into something, into your company. And people, there's wicked people out there. There's all kinds of crazy out there. So be very careful. Now, venture capital backed, financial risk shifts to investors, enabling bolder bets. That external risk tolerance can lead to moonshot thinking, high reward, but also high burn that can destroy optionality if returns don't materialize. So always when they put money in your company and you've signed legal documents saying they're partners, so you try them, don't make them full partners of your company, limit the partnership. I usually say 25% or less, maybe 30 or less. Don't give them a whole 60%, you got 40. Anything over 50%, they own you. So that's why you have to make sure the people that if you want to give it away and sell the rate, that's fine, because some people create companies to sell them. That's fine. But if you don't want to do that, watch the partnership, because when they put monies in, that means they have ownership of your company. And if you have a situation with them, you can't have a situation after you sign the dotted line. So you got to work that thing out really nicely, because then if they have an issue and then the risk falls on them, they come in to get the company, come to get their monies. They want to get their return. So you have to be very studious, and you have to be a good steward of that money. Make sure everything works out so they get the monies back. Don't be a company. I've heard some companies where people put the money in and they can't get their monies back. You will go to jail. You will. We're hearing, you hear it in the news all the time. Be very careful. Don't get giddy with the money. I tell people all money is not good money. Watch what you're getting. Watch who's giving it to you and find out, do background checks. That's another thing I've been looking at lately. People don't do background checks never. I don't care if they're a Christian. I don't care if they're not. Background checks, because there are things people find out and you would not know up front. And then later on, when they come back with weird stuff, you're like, well, what is this? But once it's checked, you've already signed the contract with them. So you can't go back now to change it. So be very aware in business. That's why for me, I'm a founder and I'm still bootstrapping, I guess. I guess I'm a bootstrapper. But I'm very careful with, you need investors, but I'm very prayerful about it. Everything I do, I'm praying, because I'm like, God, after all this work, then it's a lot of work, mind, body, and soul. You don't want to have your company come up and then somebody come and take your company into a hot mess with it. And then your name's on the line, your company's on the line, you feel a mess, you lose money, you can't there's a whole bunch of stuff that could happen. So get legal advice where necessary, financial advice where necessary, and make sure you get that thing nicely done. Okay, we're almost done, I think. You have fundraising time and mental load. Bootstrapped, you avoid fundraising cycles, which frees time for product and consumers. Venture capital, but you also face constant pressure to generate revenue. So it's only you. You don't have to go get fundraising stuff and do all these investment meetings or whatever. It's only you, but you got to make the money. Okay, now that's where the situation is a situation. Take it from someone who knows. Okay. Venture-backed fundraising consumes time, energy, and political capital, but when successful, it buys runway and resources. The hidden cost, managing investor relationships, becomes an ongoing executive responsibility. You have to have meetings. You have to give them reports. You got to show them what is making money, what is not making money. All these different things you got to put to them, and rightly so. So again, weigh your options and see what's necessary. At a certain point of the company, if it's not making enough, you may need to go to investors. But I've heard some companies, and I'm praying that I could be one of those, where they never needed investors. They just made money and they made so much of it, and they were the prime. They bootstrapped it, and it worked. So it's not like it can't work. You just have to do a lot of work and know what to expect. I always tell everybody, don't expect something for something if that's not what it's meant to produce. Okay, so if you know what a bootstrapping is and know what a venture capital backed company is, don't expect something from either or that is not supposed to give. Okay, so you don't go into that, oh my God, I wish I could get this and that, but you want to be a bootstrapper. No. Or you're a venture capital, all these people give you money, and you're like, well, I it's my company. I did this. You can't tell me. Know what it is so you don't get messed up. Okay, and last one, brand and market perception. Bootstrap. Markets may respect sustainable businesses, but sometimes write them off as not bold enough. This affects partnerships, media attention, and recruiting in certain ecosystems. Okay, markets may respect sustainable businesses, but sometimes write them off. So understand that. With venture capital backed companies, high profile funding rounds confer credibility and open doors because you know more people. It's like almost like a networking thing now. That halo helps with recruiting and press. So if you're linked to another company and that company has all these different people they know, usually they're bigger companies than yours, they're more well connected, they're richer than yours because they have the money to put in. So if they connect with you, you connect with everyone they're connected to. They can put you onto other people, and that helps to grow you even faster. Whereas if it's just you, it's you and what you know and what you know and what you know. And so that could be a little bit more difficult to manage or to maneuver you into the scalability that you want. So you have to understand that. So when you, that's why it's also, it can go the other way as well. When you're linked to venture capital people, make sure they have a good reputation. Everybody they're linked to, you get linked to them. That's what partnership is. So if they're a bad company that's not linked with your values, whether it's whatever moral values, whatever it is, and you link to them, whatever happens to them, people are going to say, well, why did you link with that company? Especially if it's bad. If it's good, everybody's happy. But when the bad hits, that's when everything goes down the tubes. So it's just a matter of managing and doing your due diligence and understanding the situation you're in so you can grow your company in the way it needs to be grown. And just in the podcast, it was mentioned you somebody said to me, you get $1 million, whatever, and that $1 million that you put in can either break you or sink you. I can't remember how they said it. You go on the podcast and you hear it. And I thought that was really, really good. I'm like, that is even makes sense because yeah, you get the money, but in the end, that money was able to was able to sink you because you didn't do your due diligence. So if it's a good situation, you're going up. If it's a bad situation, the company's bad, the people are bad, you're going down, and you didn't even know it. You know what I mean? And that's why we have to be very, very careful. That's what good stewardship is. Stewardship looks like. You're doing your research. You're checking the companies well. You're checking out people well. Even the employees, check them out. Do the background checks because they could bring in situations that you don't even know about. And the larger your company gets, the more people you're getting. How many people know? More people, more problems. So you got to manage that well and know what they're bringing in. Make sure they're people that are aligned. Like even with our Fava Reach and our human traffic victims, we're putting together all these different things. We have to make sure we line up with the right people because this is a very delicate situation because you have people who are coming in who are very fragile, who are coming in from really situational circumstances where they were taken advantage of and their minds are gone, their bodies maybe gone, everything because of people took advantage of them. So you can't bring in people like that and have people that don't align with that because you could bring them in and get more damage. So we have to be very careful of even all these different things. And that's the things we pray about. And so for me as a founder, being bootstrapped for a little bit has its advantages because all these things I hear with different companies, I can now internalize them and say, oh my God, if we're going there, these are the things we shouldn't do. These are the things we should do. These are the people we shouldn't hang out with. These are the people we should hang out with. And God, please bring the right people, you know? So it's a different situation, but it's good to know, you know, it's really, really good to know because you want that money. Like somebody bring $1 billion, I say, oh my God, hold up. Let me check with you. Don't just say yes. Say, let me just check and see if this works for us. Do your due diligence and ask them the hard questions. And that's something you should do for any relationship, whether it's marriage, whether it's friends, whether it's business, anything. Ask the hard questions up front because when you ask the questions, then you can understand what you're getting into. Okay, so this is a very good topic. I really enjoyed it. This one was really, really good, especially for us being in the founder space. You need to know your stuff, okay? Because people out there, it's a hot mess, and they do it and they don't even care, okay? So just be aware. Okay. All right, let's go straight to